Shall I start, Wedgie?
Um, I'm just looking at the Teams chat,
Mm,
and there are still people here that haven't been able to get onto the Zoom.
mm.
I'll just give them a text telling them to join the link, and if it doesn't work, they can have a look at the recording later.
Yeah. And my email address is at the end, so I'm really happy for people to contact me if they need to.
Yep, Les, we're already late. You you talk about your journey, so I won't give an introduction. You can start your presentation. I think that way
No one.
we'll save some time.
Okay, then. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yes. Lovely. Okay. So, good morning. My name is Liz Stamatelatos. I'm really sorry about the late delay starting because I am not, as I said, not very technologically minded. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about becoming a neurodivergent affirming therapist. Now, although I am not neurodivergent myself, this is something that I feel really passionate about because originally I was a special school teacher, and then I've got lots of neurodivergent friends and family. And then when I came into the counselling and then the CBT world, I realised that there was a lot that we just don't know, and that we really didn't know about people who are neurodivergent and about how best to help them. I also found that there was a lot of feeling that some therapies could not help neurodivergent people. And so this really made me want to work alongside other neurodivergent therapists and our clients and work out what we can do so that we can become more neurodivergent affirming. So I see this very much as a journey. And this is kind of, I'm going to share a bit with you kind of what I'm interested in and looking more into now. And I'm really grateful to be part of this conference that you're presenting. And this is kind of, once you become a therapist and you're working full time, then there will be lots of research that you will continue to do. And this is with your clients and also kind of outside of the therapy room. And so for me, this is very much a point on this journey. Is it's May 2025, and what I'm talking about today, I'm sure will be kind of common knowledge, or other things will be coming up in a kind of a year's time. So I just want to say that this point on our journey that we're at. So this is what I know now, and I'm always willing to learn more. So please let me know if there's anything that I've missed or anything that you can add to this knowledge. So I suppose one of the important points is, what does it mean to be neurodiverse and what does it mean to be neurodivergent? Judy Singer, who was a Australian sociologist, came up with the term neurodiverse in the 1970s to reflect the fact that we have lots of different people, as we do have like biodiverse in nature. So she sort of had that kind of concept that she brought in, but it was during the 1980s. There was an autistic activist, Kassiani Asasumasu, who actually said we also need to think of those who are neurodivergent, those who differ from what is seen as neuronormative. And she saw this very much as an inclusive term, that actually it should include as many people as possible. And we know that with the local kind of, with the recent kind of impact of people learning about their own neurodivergence and identifying as being neurodivergent, that this is something that there are more and more people who are kind of realizing that they belong under this umbrella. So often we're talking about kind of autism, ADHD, ADHD, but also it includes many other different kind of conditions and differences. So what does it mean then to be neurodiversity affirming? So these are some of my reflections. So for me, it's about embracing people as they are. I know that recently we had Autism Acceptance Month, but I kind of think we need to go beyond just accepting. We need to kind of really embrace people as they are and really kind of learn from all of our differences. We also need to recognise and to challenge ableist bias, and this is particularly within ourselves. It used to be that if you were diagnosed with autism, that you were diagnosed as either being high functioning or low functioning. You were diagnosed according to your ability. Whereas actually now people identify as either having low support needs or high support needs. But again, for many neurodivergent people, and for those of you who are neurodivergent or have friends and family, this can be really kind of up and down. It might be that one day a person doesn't have many support needs, and yet on another day they really do. So in terms of ableism, this is something that I find a lot of the clients who come in have internalized, and this is how they judge themselves and how they value their worth as a person. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I discovered my own internalized ableism because my inner critic was busily telling me that I wasn't being productive enough in a particular area of my life. And I suddenly caught myself and I thought, actually, this is ableism. This is me judging myself by what I am doing, what I'm producing. And I need to think differently. I really do. So it's noticing this bias and also challenging it and saying, actually, we don't see people by how much they function, but we look at people as they are, as individuals. So another part of being neurodiversity affirming is about creating a safe space and helping each person recognize who they are safe to be themselves with. Now, a lot of neurodivergent people talk about masking and talking about having to camouflage who they are so that they fit in. And as therapists, this is something that we need to be aware of. And I will sometimes say to my clients, do you feel that you need to mask with me? And actually to be able to create that safe space where somebody feels that they can start to drop the mask is really a part of building that therapeutic bond. But also it's making sure that if they need to, that they are safe to use their mask. And again, this is something that kind of I've been reading more up on, and I do talk to my clients a lot about. And then I suppose the other really important thing about being neurodiversity affirming is that we are reflective practitioners and that we're constantly learning from and with our clients, from other neurodivergent therapists, and also from the current communities. There is so much online. I mean, the online world has given people voices that they've never had before and given people communities. And this is an ongoing evidence base that we can use in our practice so that we can become more culturally competent. sometimes people come in with a diagnosis, but they don't actually know a lot about what they've been diagnosed with. And that can be a really important part of the therapy for them to really understand a little bit more about who they are. And we need to know that so that we can help them. So we're going to have a look today at these kind of 3 points. The first is we're going to reflect on something called the double empathy problem and how that can affect the therapeutic relationship. We're going to also look at neurodiverse experiences of emotion and also alexithymia, which I'm going to explain. And we're also going to just reflect on how we can become neurodiverse affirming as we, you know, get more into therapy and do different types of therapy. Kind of what can we do as well to help each other as well as our clients. So we're going to start by looking at empathy. Now, obviously, people come into the therapy world because they believe that they are good at empathy. They can understand how other people think, they can understand how other people feel, and they're good at walking in the shoes of another person. But actually, some important research was done by Dr. Damien Milton in 2012, and he looked at autistic people, and he had groups of autistic people who would communicate with each other, talk to each other, spend time with each other. And then he had groups of non-autistic people who would do the same. And he noticed that the communication within these groups was actually really quite good, that there was a lot of empathy. They really got each other, they understood each other, and there was a common understanding. Whereas when he put people together as a group of autistic and non-autistic people, that was when misunderstandings occurred. That was when there was lots of miscommunication and difficulties in having empathy for each other. And for us as therapists, this is really important to know, because our neurodivergent, I'm going to kind of widen it to a lot of neurodivergent people, spend their whole lives trying to fit in with the non-neurodivergent friendly world. So often our clients have spent their lives trying to fit in, communicate, and think as I do. And actually, it's my job to meet them and to start to have far more empathy and really listen to what they're telling me, even if that makes me feel uncomfortable. Now, I've got some lovely neurodivergent friends and I love spending time with them, but they can be very direct with me. They don't pad it out in small talk and social things that maybe it's social things that I would use. But I find that actually this is really good for me, because I want to listen and experience them as they are, and I want them to be free to be direct with me. And actually, in some ways, that means that I can then be more direct with them. So that actually helps me. So we need to think about ways in which we communicate and how can we actually meet our clients where they are rather than expect them to meet us. So in terms of communication, this can mean several things. One is to use very clear language. We know that some neurodivergent people do need more time to process verbal language. So to give time for them to process what I've said and then work out their response and then answer me, that is really important. And this is a discussion I will have with my clients when I first meet them about processing language and how it works for them. If somebody's very anxious, then it will take them longer to process verbal language. So again, it's noticing that and giving more time if needed. But there is also this idea about whether you can use metaphor or whether you can use kind of different types of language with neurodivergent people. And it's incredibly individual. Some, I would say, neurodivergent people don't go well with metaphor, but others really love it and have an amazingly beautiful use of language. I had a lovely client, and once he'd learned the metaphor, making a mountain out of a molehill, he absolutely loved it. So we would use that one a lot, and it was great. So again, this is about learning how our clients communicate and communicating in a way that is accessible to them. While some people might need us to go at a slightly slower pace to give them processing time, if you've got an ADHDer in the room, then they might actually need you to speed up, because they might be processing and their brain working a lot faster. So again, this is not me saying to my client, can you slow down? It's about me as well, trying to meet them and saying if I can't keep up, but working out together. How can we communicate in a way that's effective and useful to them? And then other things that I also say about communication, one is use of the written word, particularly if somebody uses a machine that speaks for them, if they're non-speaking. It might be that they need me to write things down as well as say them. And then I always offer to my neurodivergent clients if they want to record the session or if they want to take notes, so that they might need time just to process it afterwards and just to think about what's been said. So the next thing that we're going to have a look at then is about emotional experience, because this also comes alongside empathy. And one thing that I often say to my neurodivergent clients is, do you want me to ask how you are at the beginning of a sentence, or should we just like park that and not even have that conversation? Because it is very much about small talk, and it can cause a lot of confusion and anxiety, particularly if the person finds it difficult to say how they are. Now, one of the reasons that this is because when we're talking about emotions and emotional experience, we use very abstract words like happy, sad, disgust is on here, angry. And it can be really difficult for neurodivergent people to use those to explain how they are feeling. And this is to do with something called alexithymia. Now, I think I went to a training recently and they said that something like 65% of autistic people have alexithymia. And this is not having the words for an emotion. So whenever I see a client, I always say to them, do you find it easy to name your emotion? Or actually, is this quite tricky for you? And you can just see the sense of relief sometimes, because they're like, oh, actually, yeah, it's really, really hard, but I've never realized it's a thing before. And it's not because they're not experiencing the emotion. It's just that often there isn't that word, that abstract concept just makes no sense. And I have been guilty in the past of trying to teach emotions. But actually, what I've realized is that I need to come at it from a very different angle. And again, it's recent research, particularly research being done by Kelly Marler, who's an occupational therapist, who has helped me kind of understand a little bit more about what I need to do. And it's all to do with sensory reactivity. So again, when I have a client in front of me, I will ask them about their sensory responses, and I will ask them about whether there are particular smells, tastes, textures, sounds that cause in them a really unpleasant response, or maybe they're a bit muted around this particular sense. And when we talk about sensory reactivity, we often talk about the main 5. And actually we need to with our clients, particularly if we're seeing them face to face, because we need to know if particular sounds are really difficult for them to filter, or if they can't bear certain smells. Because if they're fighting a sensory reactivity issue, then they're not going to be able to focus and really be in the therapy space, which is where we want them to be. We want them to be as comfortable as possible. So the other 3 senses that we also can ask our clients about is about the proprioceptive, the vestibular, and the interoceptive. And this is all about feeling our body and feeling our place in the world and sense of balance. But the interoceptive response is the one that kind of I'm particularly interested in at the moment, because it's this ability to read the internal signals that are coming from within us. So sometimes I ask my clients to write down kind of what they've done in a day as a CBT therapist. And if I see that they eat their lunch at 12 o'clock every day and they have the same thing, I might say, oh, is that because you're hungry at that time? Or is that because that's what you eat at 12 o'clock every day? And just trying to gain a sense of, do you have a sense of when you're hungry? Do you have a sense of when you're tired? And sometimes there's just kind of, no, just what I do. It's lunchtime, that's what I eat. And actually, this has a huge effect then on emotions. And I was once shouted at by a client because I said to her, where do you feel anger in your body? And she just yelled at me and she said, what do you mean? And she was so angry because she was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. What do you mean? Where do I feel anger in my body? Because she couldn't read the signals that were coming from within her. So there is work being done around using interoception as a way in which people can kind of understand a little bit more about their emotional response. And there are also other things that we also need to consider when we're talking about emotions and neurodivergent people. One is different types of empathy. So we have cognitive empathy, which is being able to see somebody and see how they feel. And I had a very interesting occurrence in my family in January where my nephew, who's autistic, was with us. And we were watching something on a screen and we were laughing. And we were laughing so much that the tears were running down my face. And immediately he put his arm around me and he said, oh no, auntie, why are you sad? Because for him to be sad, to be crying meant to be sad, because he couldn't read the context. And understanding the context, there's a lot of really interesting work being done by a man called Peter Vermeulen about understanding the context and how that can affect how people read situations. So if I have good cognitive empathy, then I can kind of tell and understand and name what other people are feeling. If I have good affect empathy, then I can really feel it. And we know as therapists that we will often get that sense, that felt sense, that somebody might be really sad, they might be really angry, they might be really so many different emotions. And even if they're not showing it on their faces, we can feel it. And what I know about many neurodivergent people and therapists that I talk to is that they might not have great cognitive empathy, but they might have amazing affect empathy and actually be able to pick up on the vibrations of somebody else, even when maybe the person themselves hasn't realized. But for some of our clients, they might have great affect empathy and be able to pick up on the emotions of others, but they might also have alexithymia. So they might not be able to name that the response that is causing in them. And that can cause a lot of distress. So there's still a lot that I don't know about this. But again, this is part of my journey, trying to really understand this and learn from my clients about what that means and how I can help them. Another really important point to talk about is also emotional processing time. So in a CBT recording that we do when we learn to be CBT therapists, at the end of it, you always have to ask, and how was the session for you today? So I had a client and at the end of the session, I said, and how was the session for you today? And she went, Liz, she told me off. She said, I thought you knew about autism and I thought you knew it's going to take me a day or two to process what's happened in this session. And she was absolutely right that I was expecting her to fit into this neuronormative way. And actually what she needed was to switch the video off, go away, and actually then take time to process what had happened in the session. So we reached an agreement, and what she did is, after that session, is that after each session, then she would wait a day or two. Whenever she was ready, we had this agreement: whenever you're ready, you write me an email and you let me know what your reflections are on that session, and then that can help me prepare for the next one. So again, for me, this is being neurodiversity affirming. It's about really listening and adapting and going beyond, so that we can make the therapy useful to our clients. So I suppose what I ask when I'm seeing somebody is, I ask them, can you name your emotions? And then, if so, which emotions can you identify? And where do you feel it in your body? And then for those people who find those emotions difficult to identify, then I ask them, how can you describe it in a way that is meaningful to you? So I had another client, and we worked out that his alexithymia was actually quite strong. There are questionnaires that you can do online, but he could identify rage. That was one that he knew. And then otherwise it was uncomfortable. So that was the word that we use, uncomfortable, because I want him to be able to express himself in a way that is really good for him. Sadly, I hear many times of people who have been shut down because they don't use those abstract emotion words. And because of that, they're not expressing how they're feeling, even if they don't quite have the words for it. So I suppose I'm going to coming to the end now. So I'm going to talk about a lady who I worked with. She was a lady who was in her 60s, and she had come in for CBT for a long-term health condition that she had. And we started to kind of formulate and put things together. And I asked her, I said, can you name your emotions? And she said, oh, no. And I was like, oh. And she said to me she'd been through lots of therapy. And in fact, under secondary care, they tried to teach her how to name her emotions, but she still didn't really get it. And it was interesting because over time, I started to realize that there were more indications that this lady was probably neurodivergent. So there's always a bit of a quandary, isn't there? If you think somebody's neurodivergent, how do you bring it up with them? So I used a question that I'd heard one of our PWPs say to somebody on the phone once, and I thought, oh, that's great. And I said to her, is there anybody who is neurodivergent in your family? And she just it was like the floodgates opened. She just was like, yes. And she started talking about all these issues in her family that she had been reading up on. And she had realized that there was probably a lot of undiagnosed neurodivergence in her family. And then she said, I think I might be as well. And I was very clear with her. I can't diagnose. I'm not, not qualified to do so. But I did say to her, if you can go to your GP, I said, there are various indicators from the work we've been doing together and from what you said that say that, this might be the case. And I will never forget that moment when she turned around to me and she said, you mean it's okay to be me? And I just thought, wow, your whole life, you thought there was something seriously wrong with you. And finally, you've realized that actually, and I said to her, it's not just okay, it's fabulous that you are as you are. And I'm hoping that that's what she left therapy with, that sense of really being kind of affirmed in who she was. So what can we do then? We can listen. We can listen to our clients, listen to neurodivergent therapists, and really read and kind of become embedded so we become culturally competent. It is a culture, and it's a growing and changing culture, and we need to keep up to date because we are seeing these people in our rooms. we need to also spend time reflecting on what we're hearing and what we're learning. And we also hopefully can share this with other colleagues so that we can improve our practice and improve the spaces and the therapeutic space that we provide. So thank you very much for inviting me to be a keynote speaker at this conference. I really hope that this has been useful to you. And yes, I am going to send the slides onto IG, and I've also included some references at the end. And I'm very open to any questions or anything else anybody would like to say. Thank you.
Hi Liz, thanks for the talk.
Hello.
I just wanted to ask a question because I've done quite a few sessions with neurodivergent people, and I noticed that they do want to talk about their emotions and do want to experience a full range of them. But when they've struggled really badly with that, or they can't name their emotions, is there any way that you can kind of help them without having to kind of skip over that and actually not get into their emotional experience, or will it just take time?
I think, I mean, obviously it's very individual, isn't it? And I think for each person, it's trying to understand what it is they're experiencing. And this is where I've actually, I followed Kelly Marler, who's an occupational therapist, and she's got what's called the interoceptive curriculum, which kind of enables people to get in touch with different parts of their body so that they can start to understand what is their emotional experience. And again, that's a little bit out of our remit as therapists, but I think there's something really important about helping people understand what it is they're experiencing and why. And again, there's a lot of talk going on at the moment about kind of if somebody is getting overwhelmed with emotions. I mean, I use something called spoon theory. I don't know if you know about spoon theory, but we talk about kind of where do they get their energy from and what drains their energy. And again, it's understanding what is it that is going to give me maybe that space and time to process my emotions. So if they are going to go to something that could be quite overwhelming in terms of a sensory experience. So if they have to go to a family wedding, for example, then we make a plan so that they can then have an escape route. They've got somewhere to go to afterwards so that they can kind of get under a cover and just decompress from all that sensory stuff, which is going to cause overwhelm. But again, it's very individual.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. That makes a lot of sense. I'll have a look at spoon theory.
Yeah.
But I think it's quite insightful when you're talking about helping people as individuals understand how they process their emotions and how you get there. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you. So anybody else with a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Letitia. So one of my questions is, especially working with autistic clients with fixations and suicidal ideations, how do you get out of the loop of that? That's a bit heavy, but
Yeah. We know that risk is much, much higher among neurodivergent clients. And there is a lady called Sarah Cassidy who is doing work on working with risky clients who are autistic. So it's worth looking her up. I can't remember which university she's at, but she was, because she says that the risk questions that we use are often not appropriate. So it's trying to really work out kind of what is going on in terms of leading to that suicidal ideation, or, you know, obviously risk. In terms of fixations, there is also, I mean, this is like a few days training. There is a whole kind of thing about monotropism, and the fact that for non-neurodivergent people, we have very kind of polytropic brains. We can move from one thing to another, and we kind of have, you know, certain amount of interest in each one. But for autistic brains, it's really like this monotropic kind of really becoming really kind of, it's different to hyperfixation, but it's that really in-depth, absolute. I mean, my nephew knows so much about war history. It's unreal because of this need for monotropic kind of brain. But there is a guy called David Gray Hammond who does work on monotropic split, is what he talks about. There's a lady called Tanya that he works with, and he talks about his own experience about how this monotropism and then the split led to, I mean, he's been diagnosed with schizophrenia as well, and again there's a lot of crossover. So in terms of what to do about that, again, I would have a look. I would try to understand really a bit more about monotropism and what that's leading to. And then it's very much then working with the individual themselves in terms of what's going to help. But yeah, this is where kind of as therapists, we need to have more knowledge about these things so we can have our clients understand why they're doing what they're doing. And
I guess that's that leads me to another question, if that's okay. So what I've seen in the room with especially autistic people, that they can hear voices. Yeah, it happened to me twice. And it's not that they're crazy or schizophrenic or anything. It's just hear voices, and they've got very strong voices inside them, which is really. It fits very well with person-centered and multiple selves and multiple voices, but that's really, really strong. That's what I found. Yeah, absolutely. And it could be to do with this. David Gray Hammond has written a book on autism and psychosis, and it's a really, he talks about his own experience, but he's making really he's doing a lot of research into that and talking a lot about it. So I think he's known as Emergent Divergent on Facebook. But yeah, I'd look him up because that would give you more. And more do you treat that, well, not treat, but do you see that as like psychosis, or do you see that as just an expression of their internal voices? This is it. How do we do it's the big old diagnostic question, isn't it? Is it something that's on the side of themselves? These voices. Yeah. I mean, voices are not always threatening, are they? Or dangerous. And we know that people with just severe anxiety hear voices. Yeah. That it's very common, and we just don't talk about it. And we all have like internal voices, like not from hearing, but we all have like that part of ourselves. So where does it stop, and where do you signpost? And I guess that's my question around that. Well, I mean, I've just done some training in schema therapy, which often looks at different parts of the self. Yeah. And I think, and it's a long-term therapy precisely for these clients who do need more. But yeah, it's I don't know much more about it, I'm afraid, because it's not my area of expertise. But yeah, when you find out, let me know, because because it's happened to me twice, and it's and at first I was a bit spooked, I must say. I was like, okay, so, and even seeing things and stuff, but that wasn't. They weren't. Yeah, they were asking me, "Am I crazy?" It's like, you're not crazy, but it's still like, okay, how do I approach that as a talking therapist? And is it because often, and this is where it's that whole diagnostic thing, and is it something that could cause danger or risk to this person, in which case we do need to bring in other
other
Yeah.
professionals, but fortunately people like the Royal College of Psychiatrists are becoming a lot more neurodiversity affirming in their approach and understanding it more. They had a whole conference on it online, which was great, because I think they're also realizing that many of their number are neurodivergent, and I think something like 20% of GPs are. So yeah, finally starting to realize. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the resources on your institute.
Pleasure.
Liz, thank you very much. I found it very useful and insightful. With regards to hearing voices, I attended a program with the NHS in Wales, North Wales, and that was called Hearing Voices. So they had people who had different conditions and discussing about it. There was a TED talk by, I think, Elizabeth Longden on the hearing voices, where she was on psychiatric drugs for many years to find out that it was a normal experience.
Yes.
So normalizing the experience, I found it very useful.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Thank you, Mohammed. Are there any questions that I've missed in the chat, Wajid?
No, I don't think there are any questions. People are just thanking you for the talk.
Oh, my pleasure.
I think if there are no more questions, we can conclude our meeting. I'm
Yeah.
just not confident how I can send the presentations over to the people who have attended. We'll probably have to then share it with everyone. I don't know how that sits with you, Liz. Is it fine if we share it
That's fine. Yeah,
share it
yeah.
with everyone?
Yeah. I'll send you my slides. And then it's
When I say
obviously
everyone,
uploaded.
I mean the placements contacts. So
Okay, yes.
so everyone in the psychology program on Bangor in Bangor University, and I've sent it to, and I could see some of the faces from my placement, so 2 of my placements.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. To be honest, the more the knowledge gets out there, the better, isn't it? You need to share that and learn from each other. So yeah, that's fine.
Thank you so much, Liz, for giving your time. And I'm sorry what happened at the start. We just ran into a hurdle that we weren't expecting.
Don't worry. No, teams, eh? Yes.
Thanks,
Anyway, I'm so
Liz.
glad everybody could come. My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Liz. Yeah,
Lovely
thanks.
to see you
Thanks,
all.
Wajid. You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I also want to ask you, can you share the recording with us and we can...
Okay, so I need to stop recording. Do you want to stop recording? Yes. Oh, do you want to stop recording?